Hati, Turkey, March 22, 2025, 4 p.m. Bob Marley stood at the entrance of a refugee camp that stretched as far as he could see. Thousands of white tents, dirt roads, children with worn clothes playing in the dust. This was home for 50,000 Syrian refugees who had fled war. Bob's security team was nervous. "Mr. Marley, we haven't cleared this area. It could be dangerous." Bob looked at them with those ancient wise eyes. "Dangerous for who? DC people already lost everything. They not dangerous, they desperate, and desperate people need love more than anyone." He walked into the camp alone, carrying only his guitar. This trip had been planned in secret for 2 months. Bob had been watching the news about the refugee crisis. Millions of people displaced, living in camps for years, children growing up in tents, families torn apart. The world had stopped paying attention. Refugee fatigue, they called it. People were tired of hearing about the crisis. But Bob wasn't tired. He was angry. "How can the world forget these people?" he'd said to his manager. "They didn't choose this. War chose them. And now we ignore them?" His manager knew that tone. When Bob got that tone, nothing could stop him. Bob contacted a small humanitarian organization working in Turkish refugee camps. "I want to come perform. No press, no cameras, just me and the people." The organization thought it was a prank. Bob Marley wanting to perform in a refugee camp? Impossible, but Bob video called them from Jamaica, and they realized it was real. They arranged everything quietly. Bob flew commercial, no private jet, no entourage, just him, his guitar, and 2 people from the organization. They drove from Istanbul to Hatay, 6 hours in an old van. Bob sat in the back, looking out the window at the Turkish countryside, preparing himself mentally for what he was about to see. When they arrived at the camp, word spread quickly. "A famous musician is here." Nobody knew who. Some thought maybe a Turkish pop star, but when Bob walked through the camp, an elderly Syrian man recognized him. "Bob Marley? The Bob Marley?" The man started crying. "I listened to your music in Damascus before the war. You kept me sane during the darkest times." Bob hugged him. "What's your name, brother?" The man wiped his tears. "Khalil? I'm nobody now, just a refugee." Bob shook his head. "You're not a refugee. You're a survivor. That's everything." Khalil became Bob's translator. He spoke Arabic and English fluently. Together they walked through the camp. Bob stopped at every tent, talked to families, held babies, played guitar for children. One tent housed a family of 7, living in a space meant for 2. The mother was cooking rice on a small camping stove. She looked exhausted. Bob sat down on the ground next to her. "How long you been here?" Khalil translated. The woman replied in Arabic. Khalil translated back, 4 years. We've been here 4 years. My children don't remember Syria. They only know this camp." Bob's heart broke. 4 years. Children growing up in tents. No schools, no futures. Just surviving. He played 3 Little Birds for the family. The children didn't understand English, but they understood the melody. They smiled. The mother cried. When Bob finished, the mother said something in Arabic. Khalil translated, "She says your music made her remember what hope feels like. She'd forgotten." Bob held the woman's hand. "Never forget hope, sister. Hope is all we have. Hope is everything." By evening, 5,000 people had gathered in an open area of the camp. Word had spread. Bob Marley was going to perform. They set up the simplest stage imaginable, wooden pallets stacked 3 feet high, 1 microphone, 1 speaker. That was it. No lights, no production, just Bob and his guitar as the sun started to set over the camp. The humanitarian workers were worried. "Bob, this crowd is huge. We have no security. If it gets chaotic." Bob waved them off. "These people been through war. They know how to be peaceful. Trust 'em." Bob walked onto the makeshift stage at 6 p.m. The crowd went silent. These weren't fans who'd bought tickets. These were people who'd lost homes, families, futures. And here was Bob Marley, a legend, standing in their camp. A man in the crowd shouted in Arabic. Khalil translated for Bob. He says, "Why are you here? Famous people don't come here." Bob spoke into the microphone, Khalil translating sentence by sentence. "I'm here because you matter. D-World may have forgotten you, but I haven't. Music doesn't belong in fancy concert halls. Music belongs wherever people need it. And right now, you need it more than anyone." Bob started playing Redemption Song. Slow, acoustic, raw. His voice, aged and raspy at 80, carried across the camp. "Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds." 5,000 people listened in complete silence. Many didn't understand the English words, but they understood the emotion, the pain, the hope, the defiance. By the second verse, people were crying. Not sad crying. Cathartic crying. Years of pain releasing through music. In the front row sat a 9-year-old girl named Amina. She'd been in the camp for 3 years. Her father had died in the war. Her mother was sick. Amina hadn't spoken in 2 years. Selective mutism, doctors called it. Trauma had stolen her voice. She just sat silently in their tent, day after day, staring at nothing. But her mother had brought her to Bob's performance, hoping for something, anything. Bob noticed Amina. Her eyes were locked on him, but they were empty. Hollow. He'd seen that look before. In children who'd seen too much. After finishing Redemption Song, Bob did something unexpected. He walked off the stage and sat down in the dirt next to Amina. 5,000 people watched. Bob smiled at her. "What's your name, little one?" Khalil translated. Amina didn't respond. Her mother, standing behind her, spoke in Arabic. Khalil translated. "Her name is Amina. She hasn't spoken in 2 years, not since her father died." Bob looked at Amina with infinite kindness. "Amina? Beautiful name. You know what it means? Trustworthy. Faithful. Your father gave you a strong name." He started playing guitar softly. Just chords, no singing, just music. Amina watched his fingers move across the strings. Bob played for 5 minutes. Then he stopped and offered the guitar to Amina. "Want to try?" Amina looked at the guitar, then at Bob, then back at the guitar. Slowly, she reached out and touched the strings. A single note rang out. Amina's eyes widened. Bob guided her small hand to another string, another note, then another. For the first time in 2 years, Amina made a sound. Not words, but sound. Music. Her mother gasped, covering her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. The crowd held its breath. Bob and Amina played together. Simple notes, nothing fancy. But it was communication. It was connection. It was healing. After a few minutes, Bob whispered to Amina, "Your voice is still inside you. Music just reminded you where to find it." Amina looked up at Bob, and for the first time in 2 years, she smiled. Bob stood up, gently taking his guitar back. He returned to the stage, but he was crying. 80 years old, legendary musician, crying in front of 5,000 refugees. "I came here thinking I would give you something," Bob said through tears, Khalil translating. "But you gave me something. You reminded me why music exists. Not for money, not for fame, but for this. For moments when we remember we're human. When we remember we're not alone. Thank you for that gift." He played for 2 more hours. No woman, no cry. One love. Get up, stand up. Between songs, he told stories about growing up poor in Jamaica, about facing discrimination, about losing people he loved, about survival. The refugees saw themselves in his stories. He wasn't a rich celebrity. He was one of them, someone who'd suffered, someone who'd survived, someone who chose hope over bitterness. As the sun set completely and darkness covered the camp, Bob played his final song. A new one. He'd written it the night before in his hotel. It was called "We Still Here." The lyrics were simple but powerful. Bombs fell, but we still here. Families torn, but we still here. World forgot, but we still here. And as long as we still here, we still got hope. The crowd sang along even though they didn't know the words. They hummed, they clapped. They existed together in that moment. 5,000 people and one 80-year-old legend proving that music transcends language, borders, and trauma. When Bob finished, he didn't take a bow. He just walked into the crowd, hugged people, shook hands, held babies. Security tried to protect him, but he waved them away. For an hour, Bob moved through the crowd like he was family, because to him, they were. A young man grabbed Bob's hand and spoke in broken English. "Mr. Bob, I was architect in Syria. Now I am nothing. But your music make me remember I still have dreams." "Thank you." Bob squeezed his hand. "You still architect. Buildings gone, but knowledge still here." He tapped the man's head. "They can destroy cities, but they can't destroy what's inside you." Bob left the camp at 9 p.m., exhausted, emotionally drained, but fulfilled in a way concert halls had never fulfilled him. In the van driving back to Istanbul, he sat silently, processing everything. Khalil sat next to him. "Bob, what you did tonight, those people will remember it forever. You gave them hope." Bob shook his head. "They gave me hope. They showed me that humans can survive anything, lose everything, and still smile, still love, still dream. That's not hope. That's proof that love is stronger than any weapon." The humanitarian organization had recorded the performance on a simple phone camera. Nothing professional, just documentation. They posted a 3-minute clip on YouTube with the caption, "Bob Marley performed for Syrian refugees today. This is what music can do." The video went viral overnight. 50 million views in 24 hours. 100 million in 48 hours. News outlets picked it up. Bob Marley brings music to refugee camp. Legend reminds world that refugees are human. Bob Marley's most important performance wasn't in a stadium. But the real impact wasn't the views. It was what happened next. World leaders saw the video. The UN Secretary General called Bob personally. "Mr. Marley, what you did brought global attention back to the refugee crisis. Can you help us keep that attention?" Bob agreed. He became a UN ambassador for refugees. Not a symbolic role, a real one. He visited camps in Jordan, Lebanon, Greece, Uganda. Every visit he performed, every performance he connected, and every connection sparked donations, policy changes, awareness. The Turkish government, embarrassed that a refugee camp in their country had such poor conditions, invested $200 million in improvements. Schools were built, medical clinics opened, living conditions improved, other countries followed. The refugee crisis didn't disappear. But the world started paying attention again, and it started with one 80-year-old man who chose to spend an evening in a place most famous people would never go. Amina, the girl who hadn't spoken in 2 years, started talking again 3 weeks after Bob's visit. Her first words were singing "Three Little Birds." Her mother sent Bob a video. Bob watched it and cried. He replied with his own video message. "Amina, your voice is beautiful. Never lose it again. The world needs to hear what you have to say." Amina kept that video on her mother's phone. She watched it every night. It became her lullaby. 1 year later, March 2026, Bob returned to the same camp. Many families had been resettled by then. The camp was smaller, but Amina was still there. Bob found her. She ran to him and hugged him. This time she spoke, in English. "Thank you for finding my voice." Bob knelt down to her level. "I didn't find it. You always had it. I just reminded you where it was." Amina smiled. "When I grow up, I want to make music like you. To help people like you helped me." Bob nodded. "Then you will, because you already understand what music is for. Not for fame, for healing." That's what would have happened if Bob Marley performed in a refugee camp in 2025. He would have gone where others wouldn't, brought music where others forgot, reminded the world that refugees aren't statistics. They're humans. They're architects and mothers and children and survivors. And they deserve to be seen. Bob Marley saw them, 5,000 people in a Turkish refugee camp. And in seeing them, he reminded the world to see them too. That's legacy, not album sales, not awards, but impact. Real, tangible, generational impact. One guitar, one camp, 5,000 souls remembering that they still matter. And one 9-year-old girl finding her voice again. That's music. That's Bob Marley. That's what happens when a legend chooses love over comfort. Every single time.